Shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Page 129. Near the bottom of the page. Ki eshmera Shabbat, because I will guard Shabbat. El yishmerini, God will guard me. Ki eshmera Shabbat. El yishmerini, ki eshmera Shabbat. El yishmerini, oti le'ol me'at, beino uveini, oti le'ol me'at, beino uveini. Eshmera Shabbat, Yishmerini, Eshmera Shabbat, Yishmerini, Oti le'ol me'at, beino uveini, Oti le'ol me'at, beino uveini. As we light our Shabbat candles, you'll find the blessing on page 120 if you'd like to see the words. As we usher in the final Shabbat of 2022 on the secular calendar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We continue with Kabbalat Shabbat as we make our way away from the busyness of the week and toward the peace of Shabbat. We continue page 130 with words from Psalm 95. Lechu neranena l'Adonai, let us sing joyfully to God. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Naria, naria, litzui yishenu, ekadma fanav. From Psalm 96 on page 131, we say, Shir Adonai, Shir Chadash, sing a song to God, a new song. Shir Adonai, Kol Haaretz, all the earth sings a song to God. As the composer has made this particular melody, we flip those two lines. It's in the second one first and the first one second. I know that's confusing, but it makes sense. Shir Adonai, Kol Haaretz, Shir Adonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Adonai, Shiru God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God, and we'll all sing along. All the earth, a new song unto God. Shir Adonai, Kol Haaretz, Shir Adonai, Shir Chadash. On page 132 at the bottom of the page, 4 lines from the bottom, we sing the words, Or Zarua La Tzaddik, light is sown for those who are righteous. Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha, and for those who are good-hearted, they will find happiness. If we are righteous and good-hearted, we will have light and happiness in our lives, and hopefully through us into the world as well. Or Zarua La Tzaddik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua La Tzaddik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua La Tzaddik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua La Tzaddik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Lai 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 lai. Or Zarua La Tzaddik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. Or Zarua La Tzaddik, Ul Yishrei Lev Simcha. We read from Psalm 98 together in English at the bottom of page 133. A song. Sing to Adonai a new song, for God has worked wonders. God's right hand, God's holy arm has won God victory. Adonai has manifested God's victory, has displayed God's triumph in the sight of the nations. God was mindful of God's steadfast love and faithfulness toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth beheld the victory of our God. Raise a shout to Adonai, all the earth. Break into joyous songs of praise as we break into joyous songs of praise, continuing with Psalm 99 on page 135. The last 3 lines, Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, we exalt Adonai our God, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho, and we bow down at God's holy mountain. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Vishtachavu Lehar Kodsho. From Psalm 29, we'll read together page 136 and 137. A Psalm of David. Ascribe to Adonai, O divine beings. Ascribe to Adonai glory and strength. Ascribe to Adonai the glory of God's name. Bow down to Adonai, majestic in holiness. The voice of Adonai is over the waters. The Lord Adonai over the mighty waters. The voice of Adonai is power. The voice of Adonai is majesty. The voice of Adonai breaks cedars. Adonai shatters the cedars of Lebanon. God makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Sirion like a young wild ox. The voice of Adonai kindles flames of fire. The voice of Adonai convulses the wilderness. Adonai convulses the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of Adonai causes hinds to calf and strips forests bare. While in God's temple all say glory. Adonai sat enthroned at the flood. Adonai sits enthroned sovereign forever. May Adonai grant strength to God's people. May Adonai bestow on God's people well-being. Those last two lines in the Hebrew right above, Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Lai, 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 Adonai oz le'amo yitain, yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. We continue with Lecha Dodi as we welcome in the image of the Shabbat bride. We'll sing verses 1 and 2 on page 138 and verses 5 and 9 on page 139. Lecha Dodi kakala yalalai 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 li Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi kakala yalalai 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 li Shabbat mekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'diburecha hishmi'anu el ha'yuchad. Adonai echad shmo echad v'shem u'tiferet ve'letfilah. Lecha Dodi kakala yalalai 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 li Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi kakala yalalai 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 li Shabbat mekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nilcha ki mikor ha'bracha merosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tefila. Lecha Dodi kakala yalalai 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 li Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi kakala yalalai 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 li Shabbat mekabela. Verse 5. Hit'oreri, hit'oreri, ki ba'orech uvi uri, 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 shir daber kevod Adonai alayich milad. Lecha Dodi kakala yalalai 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 li Shabbat mekabela. eyes as we face the door that we walk into the synagogue through, as we welcome the image of the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha u'tzola toch emuneh am segula boi chala lecha dodi likvat chala yalala 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 Shabbat mekabela lecha dodi likvat chala yalala 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 Shabbat mekabela. Before we're seated, since we've greeted the Shabbat bride, we can greet each other with Shabbat Shalom. For those of you who are joining us on our YouTube channel, and those of you who are joining us on TempleShalom.com live, Shabbat Shalom to all of you as well. And again, to those of you online, Shabbat Shalom to all of you as we all come back and find our seats. And we'll make our way to page 140. As now that we've set the week aside, we come into Shabbat. As we're seated, we'll come to Psalm 92, a psalm of Shabbat. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat. It's good to sing a psalm of Shabbat. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tov Lehodot LaAdonai, U'Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon, U'Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tov Lehodot LaAdonai, U'Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon, U'Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon. Lahagid baboker chastecha ve'emunatecha ba'leilot. Malei asor me'aleina ve'lalei higayon v'chinot. Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, Tov Lehodot LaAdonai, U'Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon, U'Lizamer L'Shimcha Elyon. Ki simachtani Adonai b'folecha, b'ma'asei yadecha arani. Ma gadlu ma'asecha Adonai, ve'od amku machshavot. We continue on page 144 with Chatzi Kaddish as we leave our introductory service and make our way into our Ma'ariv evening service. Yitkadav, Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Yamad Divrach Yerutei V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon Uv'yomechon, Uv'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Ba'agala, Uv'izman Kaharivim Eru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach, Le'alam Olam Me'amaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitbar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudesha, B'richu Le'ila Min Kol Berchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Da'amiron Be'alma, V'yimeru, Amen. We rise as we turn to page 146 as we call ourselves to prayer with the invitation of Baruch Hu. Lai 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 Baruch Hu et Adonai Amevorach Baruch Adonai Amevorach Amevorach Leolam Va'ed Amevorach Amevorach Leolam Va'ed. We can all be seated. We give thanks for creation as we read together at the top of page 149 in the English. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of time and light. You guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. El Chai v'Kayam, Tamidim lo Chaleinu, Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Ha'ma'ariv Haravim. Lai 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 lai. On page 150, we give thanks for God's love for us through the gift of the Torah. We say that the words of Torah, Hem Chayinu, they are our life, the Orech Yameinu, in the length of our days. Baruch atah Adonai, praise to you, Adonai. Ohev Amo Yisrael, who loves your people Israel. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Ahavta Amcha Ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Ukim u'mishpatim Otanu Otanu limadita Al Kain Adonai Eloheinu b'shochenu Kumeinu nasiach b'fukecha V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha U'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed Ki hem chayinu Orech Yameinu Ubahem Nehege Yoman Velayla Nehege Yoman Velayla Ve'ahavatecha Al Tasir Imenu Le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael Ohev Yisrael. Page 152 and 153, we join together in the words of Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'hisharecha leman tizkeruhu v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem. Amen. We read responsively on page 157. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. Reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. And we sing those joyful words on page 158 at the very top of the page. Lai 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 la lai la 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 lai 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 la lai la 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 lai ya lai la lai 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 la la lai ya lai 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 ya la 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 lai mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha neder b'kodesh Torah tehilot osei pele Torah tehilot osei pele malchutecha uvanecha ukei hayam nefim Moshe u'Miriam Ze'anu ve'amru ve'eli anu ve'amru Adonai hilo le'olam va'ed Adonai hilo le'olam va'ed Yai lai lai la lai la 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 Yai lai lai la lai la 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 Yai lai 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 la 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 Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 lai. Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praise are you, Adonai, Redeemer of Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Go'al Yisrael. On page 161, or 160, I should say. You say, Hashkivenu Adonai Elohim l'shalom. Lie us down, Adonai, our God, in peace. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. And spread a shelter of peace over us. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom. Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha. The last three lines. Baruch atah Adonai Aporei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom. And the children of Israel will guard Shabbat. It will be a sign forever between me and the people of Israel, God said. For in 6 days God created the heavens and the earth. And on the seventh day God ceased from all the work and refreshed God's soul. And to emulate God on the seventh day we cease from all the work. And we take time to refresh our souls. We sing together the words of Hashamru at the top of page 162. V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha'shabbat la'asot et ha'shabbat l'dorotam berit olam b'ni uven b'nei Yisrael oti Sheshet Yamim Asa Adonai Et HaShamayim Ve'et Haaretz U'v'yom HaShvi'i Shavat Shavat Vayinafash Shavat Vayinafash Shavat Vayinafash. We continue as we rise. We turn to page 164 as we come to the Amidah. We'll sing this Zimun together, this meditation together, and then we'll make our way all the way to page 180 or 181. We'll sing the first couple of paragraphs together, and then you can read the even-numbered pages for the traditional prayers or the odd-numbered pages for the poetic renditions on the theme of the prayers. And when you get to the end of your silent prayer, you can be seated. The rabbis of the Talmud were very careful about writing this section of the service. They were so careful that all of the prayers on the next 10 or so pages, 15 or so pages, they only wrote the last sentence. That's what they wrote. And they figured you would understand what the theme of the prayer was from the last sentence, and you would compose your own prayer on that theme. And then they realized, after many hundreds of years, that some of us are a little too busy thinking about other stuff to write the rest of the prayer. So they wrote the rest of the prayer for us, and they gave us those prayers. But then they said, even though we've written these prayers, you can still write your own prayers along the way, because this is both considered a communal prayer that we pray together and an individual prayer. And when you pray individually, you pray your own words. So you can pray the words that are on the page, your own words along the way. We'll sing the first couple of paragraphs out loud, and then we'll become silent and be seated when we're finished. We begin page 164. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufia gita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. 166. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chaste Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach u'Magin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham, Bezrat Sarah, atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, V'chayei hakol atah Rav le'hoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayim emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umido melach, Melech b'mi'it u'mechayeh, u'matzmiach Yeshuach, v'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, hayeh hakol. 170. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el HaKadosh. We continue silently. 278 is where you'll find these words. Maybe I should say 178 is where you'll find these words. That's a better page. Oh, yeah. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. We take a moment to think of those who are in need of healing. We turn to page 371 for the words of our Misha Berach healing prayer in the middle of the page. And we ask for Refuah Shlema, complete healing for Brian Zabel, Reuven ben Sipora, Moshe ben Avraham, Avram ben Odul, Ellen McIntosh, Paltiela bat Mordechai Vivasha, Faye Green, Malka bat Hillel Halevi, Yisrael Aharon ben Reuven Chaim HaKohen, Harriet Neal, Shmuel ben Yosef, Chris Kaplan, Gnendel bat Sima, Azi Rahmani, Beth Maxwell, Avraham ben Meir, Tova bat Rasha, David Zimmerman, David ben Rivka, Josh Gottlieb, Sue Laughlin, Lee Rosser, and Leilani Elledge. Do we have any other names for healing that anybody has today?
Stephanie Burton and Stacy Parker.
Thank you, Judy.
Denise Marshall-White, Lisa Mead.
Did I miss one, Judy? No. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Any others? For all those we've named, for those in need, for the names that those of you on YouTube and TempleShalom.com live have said. In the middle of page 371, we say for each of them. Misheberach Avoteinu Mikor HaBracha Leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach Imoteinu Mikor HaBracha Le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with Refuah Shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. This is the fifth Friday night of the month. And on the fifth Friday night of the month, instead of me writing a sermon, you get to write the sermon, because it's Ask the Rabbi night when it's the fifth Friday night of the month. It happens, I don't know, like 3 times a year, maybe sometimes 4 times a year. We stopped doing it during our COVID times, and I think this is the second time I've done it since we came back in the building for COVID. And for those of you who want to be here tomorrow morning, I'm going to do it for the very first time ever on Saturday morning. It's the 5th Saturday morning of the month. I've never done it on Saturday morning. We're going to see how the Saturday morning crew reacts to it. I hope they love it. But this is your chance to ask all those questions that you've ever wanted to know. Anything about Judaism you ever want to know. Judaism, about the prayer book, about Israel, about Judaism, about culture, about anything Jewish that you want to know, you get to ask the question, and I will give you the answer. If I don't know the answer, I will make up something that sounds so good that you'll think I know the answer, and then I'll look up the answer and call you and tell you what the real answer is later. But hopefully I know the answer, what you want to know. Carolyn, you want to start?
I want to have a question.
Go.
I've had a question before about the names of God. How many are there?
Names of God. So how many names of God are there? And the answer is over 100. We have over 100 names for God that we use in the Jewish world. So then the second half of the question should be, why do we have over 100 names for God? It could be confusing if we don't know all of the names. So why would we have over 100 names for God? And the answer is, there's only one God. Why 100 names? We all have a lot of names, don't we? Right? We have a first name that our parents gave us when we were born, right? We have a last name that our parents gave us when we were born. Now, during life, sometimes things happen in life that name changes. We have people who are adopted. Their name changes, right? We have people who get married. Their name changes. We have people who are born with one name and they become famous and they take on a new name because they don't necessarily want to go by that old name, or maybe someone in the movie or music business told them that name won't sell records, right? John Mellencamp. I'm sorry, Mr. Mellencamp. You can't be a rock star with a name like Mellencamp. That's a ridiculous sounding name. We're going to call you John Cougar, because that sounds like a rock star. And he put out one album as John Cougar, and it went platinum, and he said, I'm not doing that stupid name anymore. I'm going to use my other name, right? We have people who have dead names and a new name. We have people who change their name because they don't like the name their parents gave them. We have people who get a name like, oh, I don't know, Your Honor, Doctor, Senator, President, Mayor, right? Names that we acquire through things that we do in our professions, right? We acquire other names. That lovely person, that jerk, right? We acquire names that way by how we act, perhaps. And so, but a lot of those, we have the one name that we're given, and then we have all these descriptive names, right, that describe who we are, right? It's similar to the names of God. We have names that talk about the aspects of God. So we would say Adonai or Elohim, which are names for God that we find in the Torah, but we have other names for God. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed is He, right? Hamakom, the place. The Shekhinah, the one who dwells among us, right? Those aren't really God's names per se, not like the name on the birth certificate, but it's the names that God acquires over time, right? Moses is standing in front of the burning bush. We'll read this in about 2 weeks. Yeah, two weeks from now we'll read this story. Moses is standing in front of the burning bush. The burning bush is talking to Moses. And Moses says, when the people say, you're a crazy nut job, who was talking to you from a burning bush in the middle of the desert? Who should I say, talk to me? God says, Ahia Asher Ahia. I am that which I will be. Another name, right? I am who I am, right? I think that's a song from the Broadway musical La Cage, right? I am what I am, right? But that's a whole other story. But we use these names because we talk to God in different ways, right? Think about those of you who have children. Sometimes you have a name for them when they're good. Sometimes you have another name for them when they might not be so good. Usually it includes their middle name and maybe a couple of words after the last name, right? So when we talk to God, when we talk about God, when we talk with God, we might use these different names to talk about different aspects of God and different ways of relating to God. So this is why we have so many names. And this becomes the tradition of using different names for different aspects of God. On the high holidays, on the Shalosh Regalim, on the 3 harvest festivals, we open up the ark to read the Torah, and we say, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet. We all know those words, right? These 13 attributes of God, but they're also names of God. So that's why so many names. Judy.
Could it not also be due to the fact that the tribes spread out and the Jews spread out into the diaspora and language changed, and that led to changes in God's name as well?
So it could be that God, as we went on, God acquires more names, right? When Judy, when you were 5 years old, no one called you doctor, right? But as you got a couple of years older, 7 or 8, people called you doctor. Maybe a little older than 7 or 8.
When I became a doctor, they still would call me this.
But so as time goes on and we have life experiences going on, it's possible that the different tribes started acquiring some of these names along the way. People write G-D, right? So we won't throw away God's name. I think it's a very silly custom because none of God's names are in English. So why are you changing English letters to not spell out God's name? Because all of God's names are in Hebrew. So God, G-O-D in English to me is a description of something. It's a way because we don't really know how to translate God's name into English. But it could be that some of the tribes acquired some of these aspects of God along the way. And if we look in the Torah, we'll see there's something called, we have a few ways of looking at how the Torah was written. One is the very traditional way. This is the Torah was written by God and handed to Moses and handed down. And we have some other thoughts on how the Torah was written. And one of them says that there were 4 different authors of the Torah, and one used Adonai, and one used Elohim. And so, the idea of a couple of different tribes using different names could be something there too. But aspects of God and trying to find a way to make God more relatable to us, right? God says to Moses, tell the people, I am that which I will be. And so that means to each person, maybe God's something a little bit different. So there we go. If you ask me the definition of God, I have no idea what that word means. It's in English. I don't know about words like that. But I know about Adonai and I know about Elohim and all those kinds of things. Another question, anyone? Lily, all the way in the back up. You read there's more than one New Year in Judaism. If we read in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, which means the tractate or the volume called Rosh Hashanah in the Talmud, it talks about 4 different New Years. One of them is Rosh Hashanah. That's the name of the tractate, right? Rosh Hashanah is the new year from creation. So we count the years from creation. This is, what's the year right now, anybody? 5783. 5,783 years since creation. If you're a scientist, you disagree with me until I explain to you that I don't really think years means years. 5,783 godly periods since creation. Does that work a little better with science? I think so. Yeah, so a new year marking time since creation. There's another new year that's the new year for years. It's the first of the month of Nisan. It's March to April-ish. And that's why when we read in the Torah, it says, on the 15th day of the first month, you will celebrate the festival of Matzah. Okay? Well, that's a bunch of months after Rosh Hashanah, but it's in that first month for counting months of the year. Okay? So basically our holiday cycle goes from that month. The yearly cycle since creation goes on the other. There's another new year that is the new year for kings, which is the first day of the month of Elul. That's the month right before Rosh Hashanah. So this is the ruling kings. Why would it be the new year for kings? Because we read all in the third year of the reign of King so-and-so, right? And so it's measured from that day. And then we have Tu B'Shvat, which means the 15th day of the month of Shvat. The Talmud actually argues that originally it was the 1st of Shvat, and then it became the 15th of Shvat because they argued about it in the room, and they voted, and the 15th of Shvat came out with the most votes. That's really what happened. And the greater rabbi said it's the 15th, which is the new year for trees. Why do you need new year for trees? It's all about the money. Sort of. You don't pay taxes in ancient Middle Eastern societies on your trees until they start to produce fruit. And they don't start to produce fruit until the third year. As a matter of fact, the Torah says you're not allowed to take any of the fruit off the tree in the first 3 years. Once upon a time in a congregation of mine, I had a woman who had a PhD in botany, agricultural botany, and she told me that matches up with the way that you grow trees. I don't know a PhD in botany, so I'm going to take her word for it, that for most fruit trees, if you pluck the trees, if you take fruit off the trees before it's 3 years old, for most fruit trees, this woman told me, and she's an expert, so I believe her, the tree over its lifetime will produce less fruit. And this is why you don't pull the fruit off in the first 3 years. So in the third year, you can, but there's a problem. I don't remember exactly what day 3 years ago I planted that tree. And so what we do is we just go, look, all the trees, mark what year you did them in, and then when Tu B'Shvat comes along, you'll be in a new year, and that's when we can tax the trees. That's also when you're allowed to eat the fruit from the trees. And so those are the 4 different New Years that we're told about in the Talmud. Do we have a New Year's party for any of them? No. We don't. One of them we pay taxes on the trees, the other we send gifts to the king, and the others we just mark the time of the changing of the year and the year since creation. So, but that's what the 4 New Years are that are, and you can read. For those of you who want really exciting bedtime reading, you can read it in Tractate Rosh Hashanah. Great bedtime reading. It is great bedtime reading because by the time you get a quarter of the way down the page, you'll be asleep. So it's great. There you go. Danny.
This has to do with a question that was just asked, and that is, when do they decide that a tree is 3 years old? Is it when the seed is planted? Is it when it comes up as a sapling? Or is it when you plant?
It's from when the seed is planted. Yeah, when is it 3 years old? When the seed is planted, right? You have to have a mark that works for everybody, because you need to, nobody remembers, I planted those seed on Thursday, and I planted these seeds on Wednesday, and that was the Tuesday row over there. Nobody remembers this. So you pick this date. We use it in horse racing too, right? Right? Does everybody know that? Yeah, right? Right? Huh?
It's the colors of the jockey that I like.
No, but see, it's here. How old was the horse who won the Kentucky Derby this year? 3. How about the one who won the year before that?
3.
How about the year before that?
3.
It's always 3, right? Because there's a rule, it's 3. Now, are they all the same age? No. But when is a horse's birthday? January 1, says my horse person over here, right? All horses, their birthday's January 1. Doesn't matter when they were born, right? Their birthday's January 1 because that's the tradition. Did it come out of horse racing or did it come out of somewhere else? Do you know? It did come out of horse racing? Yeah. And it's the same thing with the trees. It was a way to organize the horses because it was so crazy to figure out how old every horse was that they could run in the proper race.
It's only race horses. It's not the rest.
The rest of the horses, their birthday's not January 1st? There we go. So for race horses, it's January 1st because you need to have that to organize the races. The same thing with the trees. The tree is anything planted in that year. On Tu B'Shvat, it becomes a year old, and then 2, and then 3 years old, because it's an easier way instead of having to have a map of every tree that every seed you planted on every day. I planted that whole section over there in 2021, on Tu B'Shvat in 2023, in February, late January, whatever it is this upcoming year. I'll know that all those trees are 2 years old. As I understand it, if a horse is born on December 31st, the next day it's a year old. So it would be the same for a tree. A tree that's planted the day before Tu B'Shvat, and then the next day is Tu B'Shvat, it's a year-old tree.
So when they're racing, if you have a late season horse, so it's born on December 1st, it's really a very young when it runs.
Right, yeah.
That doesn't, no, it doesn't. They don't read that time, no.
Yeah. But that's, yeah, and then the same thing with planting trees is that there's a certain time of year that you plant the trees, and so you wouldn't have planted the trees all year long. Danny?
I can't imagine a tree that would be giving fruit from a seed until it's 3 or 4 years old anyway. I mean, does anybody know of any trees that would?
Apparently some citrus trees that grow in the Middle East, some citrus trees do, like in the second year, there's fruit on the tree. There's a piece of fruit or a small piece of fruit, but by the third year, it's usually much after that. But if you start pulling them before the third year, it's going to produce very little fruit along the way, apparently, for a lot of trees.
And then what happens when the fruit falls on the ground? You're not supposed to touch it?
No, you
Or is
leave
that
it.
just wheat?
You leave it on the ground in those first 3 years, and if someone who's needy comes along and picks it up to eat it, then they can eat it. But you're not supposed to eat from it yourself. You leave it for the needy until it's, which is what we're supposed to do with the corners of all of our fields anyway. But it doesn't always work that way out in the country that we live in right now, because the farmers send their security squad out to get anybody who's grabbing the fruit on the ground. We'll do one more question. One more question. Anyone?
I have a question, but it's off the wall.
I'm into off-the-wall questions. Let's go for it. Sure, why not?
So, how do you deal with having so much really passionate anger and hate for what's going on, for instance, in Ukraine, and reconcile that with waiting and being patient? I mean, how do you know, is your anger to be denied in Judaism? Because you say, well, I think it's safe to say a lot of people don't believe that, God is going to fix this, we have to fix it, but we're not fixing it. There's no justice there.
Yeah, so how do we, if I can just expand on that idea, how do we find any comfort in a world that's filled with hatred and violence, and there doesn't seem to be justice coming where it should, and sometimes it seems like the bad guys are winning, right? And it could be a number of issues. It could be, as you say, the war in Ukraine. It could be political issues in any country, because every country has, on its own scale, a left and a right to its political spectrum, and there are times where things lean too far to one side or the other and angers the people, and then we have that, and then that flows into other countries and other communities, and we certainly have our fair share of anti, and then after the hyphen, right? Anti-Semitism, anti-Islam, anti-LGBTQ, anti-Black, anti-Hispanic, anti-Asian, we can put a lot of other things on the other end of the anti. And how in Judaism do we reconcile that? Difficultly, in a difficult way, because there are religions in the world who teach that the things that happen, this is all part of God's plan. I can't speak for all of Judaism. I know that when the TV stations interview me, they think I speak for all of Judaism in the entire world, but I don't. But I can tell you this, if those things in this world are God's plan, then I have no need for God. If it's God's plan that all these missiles just landed in Ukraine and killed a bunch of innocent people, I don't need that God. If it's God's plan that a baby gets leukemia and dies, I don't need that God. If it's God's plan that the Holocaust happens, I don't need that God. When people say, where is God in these kind of instances? It comes back to the question of where was God during the Holocaust, right? Why would God let this kind of stuff, why would God allow this war in Ukraine, right? Why would God allow whatever to exist in the world, right? Where is God to stop all this stuff? And my answer is this: where was God during the Holocaust? God was watching what was going on, and God was crying. And God was saying, how could my creations do this to my other creations? I gave them a guidebook. It's right there in that ark, right? I gave the world the oral law as well, the Talmud. I set up the world and I said, in the book of Deuteronomy, I set before you the blessing and the curse. I set the sun and the moon and the stars as witnesses that I've given this to you. You have a choice. You have free will. Choose wisely, because if you choose wisely, you and your children will be rewarded. And if you don't choose wisely, you'll be punished. So then someone says to me, well, what did the baby with leukemia do to be punished? And I say, nothing. It wasn't the baby who didn't do something. It's the rest of us. We decided to spend money on weapons instead of curing cancer. Why did people die in the streets? Because we decided to spend money on building bigger houses instead of feeding hungry people. We decided to allow crazy people like the leader of Russia to freely move his troops into another country and to bomb another country, and the world helps a little bit, but not much. And, we just passed, the president just signed a huge bill. A crazy thing that we do in our country is we write bills that are thousands of pages long that no one on planet Earth has read, and we spend all kinds of money on stuff that some of it we know what it is, and some of it we don't know what it is. But in there's some money to help protect Ukraine. There's $3.1 billion to give to Israel for Israeli defenses. Another $500 million was added from some lobbying of some members of Congress. There are members who didn't want any money for Ukraine and members who did want money for Ukraine, and it wound up in there. And there's from what I understand, about $500 million to replenish anti-missile brigades for the Ukraine. But God said to us, this is the world that I created. Go make the right choices. Make righteous choices. Make kind choices. Make good choices. And you'll make the world a better place if you do. And so, how do I reconcile that in the Jewish world? I say that each one of us has to look inside ourselves and figure out what we, on our own scale, can do to make the world a better place. And then hopefully the light that is created by doing that shines toward other people, and they see that light and shine more light. I really believe that every time we do one mitzvah, follow one Torah commandment, every time we do one bit of good in the world, it makes the world one little bit better. And it's our job, as a matter of fact, in a minute, we're going to say a prayer that you'll find on page 586. And we always chant it, and I'm not sure how many people actually really look at the words. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol. It's at the paragraph at the bottom of the page. It is upon us to praise the God of everything. Latet gudula liotzer bereshit. And to talk about how great everything was and is in God's creation. Shelo asanu kogoye ha'aratzot, who did not make us like the other nations of the world. Velo samanu kamishpachot ha'adama, and did not put things upon us like the other families on the earth. Shelo sam chelkenu kahem, did not make our portion like theirs. So on the one hand, I could maybe look at that and say, well, that seems pretty self-centered, doesn't it? You didn't make us like all those other people. But the lesson there is this: it is upon us to praise God's creation. God didn't make us like the other nations of the world or the other people of the world, because God told us, take the words of Torah, be enlightened by them, and then go enlighten the world with them. So the Jewish way of looking at this, or at least my Jewish way of looking at this, is to say, Aleinu l'shabeach. It's upon us to learn the words of Torah, and not just teach the words of Torah, but go out and live the words of Torah. And if we do that, we make the world a little better, one person at a time. It says in the Talmud that if you save one life, it's as if you save the entire world. That's how we do it, one person at a time. You know, if I knew the answer to how to stop a war here and there, I wouldn't be here right now, because people would be paying me millions of dollars to fly around the world, and they would have given me the Nobel Peace Prize numerous times, right? But I think the way for us to do it, the Jewish way of looking at this, is to say, it's on us to learn the words of Torah and not be like the nations of the world who don't live by it, but to actually go live by it and teach it. So I know it's a very, very incomplete answer, but that's my answer to what we need to do. And with that, why don't we turn to page 586, since you're already there, and we'll rise for the words of Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gdula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kogoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu kimishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gohor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Notei Shamayim veYoser Haaretz, Umoshav Yikaro Bashamayim Ima'ah, Ushchinatu zo, V'govei meromim, Hu Eloheinu Einot, Emet Malkeinu Efesu Lato, Kakatu B'Torato, Yadata Hayom, Yadata hayom v'hashevota elevavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim mima'al, ve'al ha'aretz, mitachat einod, in the middle of 590. Ki amalchut shelcha hi ulam loch bechavod, kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, v'ne'emar, v'ya Adonai le'melech al kol ha'aretz, b'yom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Ushemo echad. We can all be seated. In our yard sites this week, we remember and honor the memories of Betty Edelson, Hilda Greenberg, Louis Weiss, Ruth Williams, Sam Eagle, Eva Wiener, Fernan Kaheen, Joseph Levy, Julie Haim, Ruth Gerfine, Walter Saunders, Alicia Chavez, Arthur Schneider, Jose Tokaris, Lola Bach, Louis Levine, Ruth Brower, Deborah Rubino, Lyle Lindsay, Marlene Zion, Rachel Alpern, Charles Stepler, Jerry Adele, Rachel Polant, Burton Edelson, Honey Pfeffer, Jacob Lubinsky, Michael Brown, Nathan Grubstein, and Stanley Reisman. We also are in the period of Shiva for Sharon Friedman. Her funeral was on Wednesday. We also mark the passing of Goldie Altman, mother of Gary Altman. The funeral will be in Los Angeles on either Monday or Tuesday, and after Shabbat we'll have more information for the congregation there. Are there any other yard sites that anyone is observing? Yehu zichronam levracha, may their memories be an eternal blessing. We ask mourners to rise and those whose custom it is to stand with them. As we turn to page 598, 598, in their memory we sanctify God's name. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. Yitadar, Yitale, Yitalal, Shemei de Kudusha, Barichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbekata v'nechemata, D'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehe shalama rabba min shemaya, V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrama, Huya aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Before we bring our service to a close, we can all be seated. Caroline, did I see that you have the announcements? All right. A few important announcements of things to come.
Exciting.
Very exciting. Things to come in this year and next year, which is Monday, Sunday, something like that.
Sunday,
It's soon.
Monday, I don't know. Thank you all for joining us this Erev Shabbat for our service. If you are new or visit, I do the toes. New or visiting Temple Shalom for the first time, Baruch Bahim, please be sure to introduce yourself and let us welcome you. Thank you, Rabbi Jay Sherwood, for leading us this evening. Thanks to anyone and everyone who participated in the service this evening. The first and third Shabbat adult education class, Talmud study with Rabbi Jay, is making a comeback. Beginning on Saturday, January 7th at 1 p.m., Rabbi Jay will be hosting Talmud study right here at Temple Shalom. Please register for each class you wish to attend at the templeshalom.com website. Decide early and avoid the Friday noon deadline. We love knowing you're coming. Yes, January is on our doorstep. Events to look out for. Saturday, January 14th service with Bat Mitzvah Aviva Weiss, the start of the fourth Friday Shabbat potluck dinner on Friday, the 27th, and the comeback of our Jewish film series on Sunday, January 29th, with the showing of The Levees of Monticello. Judy, do you have anything to tell us about that? Put you on the spot, see?
It's actually quite well done. There's a Jewish history associated with Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home. It was allowed to fall into shambles, and the Jewish man bought it, Mr. Lee, and fixed it up, and his family and his descendants lived there for several generations.
Wow.
There was an undertone of anti-Semitism because some people didn't think a Jew should be owning the home that was once the home of one of our presidents.
So we should all come and see this great thing.
Y'all come and see it,
Yeah.
because it's going to be really good.
And,
The whole thing.
and you're going to see it again.
I didn't watch it.
Yes. Look out for all these in the coming weekly emails or in the Temple Shalom online calendar. If you haven't yet, please understand that the Men's and Women's Club January 8th presentation has been canceled due to issues beyond our control. See you in February. Any more information?
The speaker left his position at whichever hospital. It was the CEO of a hospital, and so we couldn't find anybody else to fill in and tell us what the future of medicine in Colorado Springs.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, you could make it up, and we could believe Rabbi, but anyway.
No, he was going to talk to us about the future of medicine in Colorado Springs, and
And then he
apparently
leaves.
the future of medicine in Colorado Springs does not include him.
Yeah, it's
So
over.
that's what we know.
The end of the calendar year is here, and we want to thank everyone who has made a gift to Temple Shalom this year. Many families are making end-of-year tax-deductible charitable gifts to Temple Shalom in December, and as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, we support you in your wish to give to Temple Shalom and benefit yourself at the same time. So thank you, all of you who've done that. There are lots of options for your end-of-year giving. Of course, it's a little late, but there is tomorrow, but nobody's working. So if you know any Temple members who are ill, hospitalized, or suffering from a loss, please contact the Temple office so we can be sure to provide encouragement and support. Thanks to Temple Shalom for the oneg this evening. Shabbat Shalom.
We end with a prayer for peace. Oh, say shalom b'mromah. Yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. 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 Shabbat Shalom, everyone. To those of you on YouTube and TempleShalom.com live, Shabbat Shalom to you. The rest of us will make our way back into the social hall for a little Kiddush and Motzi. Shabbat Shalom and a happy secular New Year to all of you. La, la, la.